the Judicial Service Commission interviews to fill vacancies at the Supreme Court of Appeal, as well as the Land, Labour and Labour Appeals Courts, have kicked off. And that's despite a bid by the MK party to stop it going ahead because of the exclusion of former Judge President Dr. John Hlophe, who's now a member of Parliament for the MK party. Let's take you live to our reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo, who joins us this afternoon. And Ziyanda, good afternoon. It's so important, as we heard those various organisations arguing in court last week, that this process gets going because our courts are already so understaffed. And ultimately, what was argued in court, and ultimately successfully argued, is that allowing these interviews to stall would essentially impede the administration of justice.
Absolutely, and as you know, Michelle, over the next couple of days until next Wednesday, the Judicial Services Commission will be interviewing over 50 candidates to fill 21 posts. It's the biggest number of interviews to be undertaken since the COVID-19 pandemic, and today 7 candidates are vying to fill 3 vacancies in the Supreme Court of Appeal, which is the next court of instance after the magistrates and the High Court before, of course, going to the Constitutional Court. So a very important layer within our judicial system that is being vetted today in terms of the candidates. So far, we've heard from Judges Botman and Chetty about, their capabilities insofar as being suitable candidates. Some of the questions that have come from the commissioners range from issues of, judicial overreach into other arms of the state, the ability to deal with conflict amongst themselves as judges, even going as far as understanding the kind of work that Judges Botman and Chetty have undertaken. Now, you'll recall, Michelle, that Judge Chetty was the one overseeing the matter between the ANC and the MK party when it came to the logo case, the trade infringement case in the High Court in Durban. That's the KZN division. And he was asked by Refilwe Mtsweni-Tsipane, who is the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, how he would insulate himself, from any possible influence when it comes to high-profile matters. And Judge Chetty responding by saying that, it doesn't matter whether a case is high-profile or not, as long as you look at the facts before you and apply them against the law. And that's how he approaches his matter. So these are just some of the questions that have come up in the hearings today. And the other 5 candidates are due to be interviewed, I should say, after lunchtime.
Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it, Ziyanda, just taking a look at the interviews that are going to be taking place. Of course, these are interviews for vacancies at the Supreme Court of Appeal, the Land, Labour Appeals Court. There's also one vacancy at the Constitutional Court, but I understand that that won't be interviewed for during this round of interviews, just because the number of nominations were not enough. But there are 6 judges, insofar as the Supreme Court of Appeal is concerned, 6 judges that will be battling it out for 3 vacancies at the Supreme Court of Appeal. And many of them, I'd go as far as to say most of them have done this before, right? They're not newcomers to these interview processes for the SCA.
That's right. Most of them have actually even been interviewed more than once before the Judicial Services Commission. In fact, that's the case when it comes to Judge Botman. I think she's come 4 times already. So it's not as if these are newbies or people who don't have experience. But again, there is still a lot to be questioned around the number of judges. There's just simply not enough judges, as we would have heard from Judges Matter this morning, that there are not enough people, that can actually fill these posts. And you've mentioned the one on the Constitutional Court, which is very critical, and they still won't be able to fill that. Next week as well, Michelle, is another interesting case that we'll be seeing, where the Western Cape Division is looking to fill the position of the Judge President. Now, as you'd know, the acting Judge President is Patricia Goliath, and she's seeking to be appointed permanently in that post. But But in the interview process, as you'd know, the judge president usually oversees the interview process. Now, she can't obviously oversee the interview process of herself, and that's part of the discussion that took place behind closed doors this morning with the JSC in terms of how they would deal with such a matter. So that's taking place in exactly 7 days next Monday when they fill that division. But for now, today, the main focus is on the Supreme Court of Appeal.
It's the largest round of interviews, isn't it, since 2021 and the COVID-19 pandemic. It's also, Ziyanda, the first round of interviews that our new Chief Justice will be chairing.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a lot of firsts in this particular sitting. It's the first time that Chief Justice Mandi Samaya, in her capacity as chairperson of the JSC, is overseeing the interviews. But there are a lot of new faces. A lot of these commissioners are also new. As you know, we are under a government of national unity, so it is also a first for them as well. And it's also the first time, remember, Michelle, that before, there was a lot of talk around the quality of the questions being asked by commissioners, and you'll know that NGOs like Judges Matter had actually raised this sharply. So it's the first time as well we'll be seeing those new rules being applied insofar as the kind and the caliber of questions that come from the commissioners, in particular those that are coming from the NCOP and the National Assembly. So it's quite a series of firsts for this sitting.
Important sitting it is. Ziyanda Ngcobo, thanks very much indeed for that update. Live to us there as those JSC interviews get underway.